Gotta be twice as good to get half they got. Mama told me young who I was, they thought that we forgot. Born kids in Queens, do your research and you can see the plot. Damn shame we watching our people die by these crooked cops. Freddie Gray, say his name. Sandra Bland, say her name. Saville Smith, say his name. Jay Anderson, say his name. Breonna Taylor, say her name. George Lacevedo, say his name. George Floyd, say his name. That's a damn shame. This a new day, coming from the bottom, had to get it, scream no justice. No peace, and I'm with it, we'll tear it all down so we can finally get up. Put your right fist in the air, you rockin' with us. 100 years we've been fighting, but we still here. Since 55 we've been marching, but we still here. They said Jim Crow been gone, but we still here. But we still here, yeah, we still here. King had a dream I got to live when I went to school.
Okay, cool.
What's up?
What it is, yo? Oh, what's up?
There we go. What's up, y'all?
What's up? What's up?
It's Brandon, Sedan, and Destiny.
And y'all know what's going on, you know. It's the Revolution Ready podcast. And we here to inform y'all and keep y'all in the loop with everything that y'all need to know as far as what you need to do to stay revolution ready.
Mm-hmm. And what's going on in the community.
Mm-hmm. And ways to also get involved.
So, today we're going to speak up on police brutality, and we're actually going to reach out to some people and get some input from them. And these people are
Jasmine and Luis. They should be coming up shortly. That's part of the reason why we're a little delayed today. We've been having a couple of technical difficulties, as well as with our audio. They should be coming on in just a few moments. So.
Yes.
Okay, we have Jasmine. Let's go ahead.
We can bring Jasmine on the camera. Hi, Jasmine.
Hey, everyone. What's going on?
How you doing?
I'm good. It's good to be in space with y'all and appreciate the invite.
Thank you for coming on the show today.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, we really do.
You want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Jasmine Delafosse. I'm based out of California, specifically Stockton. And I serve as the senior regional organizer with the Gathering for Justice. And through our work, I serve as really a community organizer who really works at the intersections of racial justice, juvenile justice, violence prevention, de-incarceration, and around community and youth development. But through our work, both personal to me, obviously, is, having, with this conversation specifically, having lost a relative to a police shooting in Stockton in 2015, I know how close this conversation is to our hearts. So when asked to be a part of it, it was a no-brainer for Lewis and I to join this conversation.
And what relative was that you had that passed away?
It was our cousin who was killed in Stockton. His name is Matau Tunu'u, and was killed by 3 officers in Stockton and was shot 3 times after a call when we were asking for help. And when we asked for help from a call, really was a wellness call. We were asking for some behavioral health services. What ended up happening was over like 30 cops showed up to the house around midnight, and rather than de-escalating the situation, ended up killing and shooting him in front of his daughter, his sister, his mother, and family. And so since this situation took place, our district attorney has justified the shooting, and we still haven't received justice for him to this day.
And did the officer get fired?
No, matter of fact, one of the officers who was involved just in June of 2020 was involved in another police officer involved shooting that killed our brother Antoine Baris from Stockton, California. And another officer who also was a part of that shooting was involved in 4 other police officer involved shootings by the name of Officer Wells. And so David Wells, to be specific. And so we're still continuing to fight and push on our end on this issue as well, out here in our hometown.
And that explains a lot why you chose to join and help with the fight in Wauwatosa against Joseph Mensah.
Absolutely. You know, we recognize that these issues aren't just isolated issues, right? That these issues are happening across this country, and especially in small towns and rural areas or smaller cities, smaller urban cities, such as Wauwatosa, in Milwaukee and other places around Wisconsin that you all are in. But definitely, which was why we all joined you all. And it's also a part of really the mission of the gathering, and really, really close and personal to a lot of our own personal team members who've also been impacted at some capacity.
And what is going on in the city? Are you guys still like protesting, or?
You know, it's quite interesting. The dynamics really around just the history and places of Stockton. We have, boots and folks on the ground really pushing to change these policies, families who are out every day, every week, calling for justice. But when you think about the culture of California and the culture between really the East Coast and the West Coast, if you're familiar with California, we are basically about 45 minutes south of Sacramento, which is the capital of California. We're about 55 miles also south of the Bay Area, Oakland, San Francisco, Alameda County, East Palo Alto. Like, that's all Bay Area. And then we're like in the pockets of the Central Valley. So we're in the middle of the state. And then you got the southern part of the state, which is, Southern California. You got Los Angeles area, Ventura County, San Diego. And in Stockton, just the culture, the Black Panthers birthed out of Oakland, California, built this movement, has this culture of understanding what it means to be in community and solidarity to folks. Right. But in the Central Valley, it's almost like this desert, right? Where organizing hasn't always been embodied, I guess, in the Central Valley as it has been in areas like Los Angeles and Oakland. And so as we begin to build power and begin to train and activate our people, we're recognizing that, folks are now awakening up to this issue that this matters. Oh, this is an issue. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it was before the shooting of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, but it did activate more people in Stockton, in the Central Valley, than it had been before. But we know that for a long time, cities and places like Stockton haven't really been on the map. But that's not to say we also have other leaders who've been a part of this movement. I can't disregard the labor rights movement with Dolores Huerta, who led the great fight and the rights for workers to have rights in the farms and the fields, as well as, Cesar Chavez and Larry Itliong, who organized within California. So there's a lot of history, but it's really different with the types of movements that have been happening historically throughout California. Mm-hmm. But we're getting there.
And Jasmine, I don't know if you can see the comments, but a lot of people are, they're pretty much sending comments of lots of love and sending condolences to you and your family.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate that.
And while we're on this topic, it's very touchy, but at the same token, we understand what we're fighting for.
That's right.
California being deeply rooted in where the fight started, we feel where you're coming from.
Absolutely.
Me, myself, I lost my brother. So, of course, the fight where we have to show up to is a lot different from a lot of other fights.
That's right.
And it's something that, when we think about it, it breaks us so bad, but it brings out the fight in us.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
It hurts so bad that we don't want to cry no more now. We really do want to fight, and we want to do it the right way because we've seen our anger get the best of us in situations other people would have never understood what happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm always sending you love. When we heard of your story, when we went to Wisconsin, like the sisters of Ashar Monterosa, they oftentimes said it's like, it's not something you wanted to join into. You know, it is something that you became a part of. It's a network that you wish no other family to go through.
Right.
But we also recognize that, you know, it's going to take us to really disrupt and dismantle and tear apart the entire system. And, you know, one of the things we talked about too is like, sometimes it just hurts because, you know, on the anniversaries of you know, just the month anniversaries or the day anniversaries, it's like, you know, folks could be mourning the loss of their loved ones. But, you know, with Sean and Ashley and Michelle, you know, on the 4-month anniversary, they put their bodies on the line and were arrested, you know, in front of the governor's mansion, calling for justice, for them to open and appoint a special prosecutor. You know, the fact that we have to put our bodies and lives on the line while still having to grieve at the same time, you know, it just doesn't make sense sometimes. But we also recognize what we got to do, you know, to make change.
Exactly.
I salute you, sister.
Yeah,
I do. I salute you.
Thank y'all.
Most definitely.
We also have. Go ahead.
So we got Luis coming in. We got sound from him.
And you are on the West Coast.
I'm on the East Coast. I'm in the city.
East Coast. Okay. East Coast.
So, Luis, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to the people?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. My name is Luis. Serving as the National Director of Youth Campaigns here at the Gathering for Justice, based out of the Bronx, New York City, where hip-hop was birthed, where the culture comes from. A lot of the work that I do is really grounded in King and nonviolence, in Black radical tradition. Growing up as an Afro-Latino, I sort of was surrounded by the violence that engulfed New York City in the early 2000s, and even now. Grew up during broken windows policing, and so I know what it is to sort of walk down the street and see my brothers and so many others, my uncles and peers, be stopped and frisked by the police, be arrested for things that they're sort of not accountable for. I understand what it's like to survive gun violence, survive the hood in so many ways. Still living in very much similar communities here in the Bronx, and so I think so much of the work that I do is grounded in the understanding that we really need changes in our system. And so a lot of the work that I do is at the intersection of racial justice, violence prevention, and juvenile justice as well. I've experienced closely in my family, both my brother, my father, incarceration. I understand what it's like to sort of be systems impacted and know the repercussions of these systems and the ways in which it affects families and households across the country. And so really just bringing sort of my effort and my lens to this work, understanding the work that we do is all interconnected, understanding that when police are both acting violently and brutalizing our community members, that very much so leads to the police brutality and the ways in which we see our brothers and sisters murdered at the hands of police across the country. And really, I think as a young person, more than anything, I'd like to center young folks in my work. Young people who are committed to the cause, young people like you all who are showing up on the streets every day. And so through my role here at the Gathering, really highlighting and centering the work and the issues that young folks are being impacted by. Yesterday, I saw a video of a young Black girl being slammed on the floor in her school. And that's more of a reminder than anything that we really need police-free schools. Like when I think about the Gathering for Justice's mission to end child incarceration and advance equity for Black and brown youth, I'm thinking about Daisha Scott, who was the reason why Harry Belafonte founded the Gathering for Justice, a 5-year-old Black girl who was arrested in her classroom in Florida. It's a similar pattern that happens too often across the country, and really that's what makes me want to commit to do this work.
Absolutely. So how did you get involved initially?
So at the age of 14, my brother was incarcerated, was arrested he was 16, I was 14 at the time, for a charge he didn't commit. Charged him with everything from assault. His highest charge was attempt of murder.
That's serious.
He was very serious. He was arrested after being stopped and frisked and arrested. He, at that point, I think he had been arrested over 8 times already, and he was just 16. This one police officer, as well as his partners, as well as the entire precinct, really actively went out onto the streets, arrested young people, brought them into the precinct just to question them, ask them what they knew, and if they refused to give information, if they refused to share what they knew about what was going on the block or who had what or who was doing what, they went down for it. They were arrested for the charges.
Wow.
There is someone who had a pattern of harassing and sexually assaulting mothers. Specifically, he was sued multiple times. Eventually, that's what actually brought him to that police department in the Bronx, moving from, I believe, Long Island. And this police officer had been charged and had been sued for sexual harassment. He asked for sexual exchanges from mothers in exchange for letting their kids be released from charges that they didn't even commit. But he said, I'll let them walk out the precinct if you give me a blowjob or if you do this. And it was very vulgar. It was very crazy. And I think there's incredible reporting that's been done by Shaun King and some private investigators on the severity of the case. But through that work and really fighting to get my brother out of jail, who was only 16 at the time, on the verge of graduating as he was a year advanced. I did what any other brother would do, at least what I think would happen, and what any other family member would do, fight to demand justice for my brother. And through that work, I was introduced to Carmen Perez and Linda Sarsour at the Justice League in New York City, which is the Gatherings grassroots task force that's based here in the city. And they built a campaign in one day, brought together over 40 stakeholders, everyone from elected officials to nonprofit executive directors to community leaders. And literally over a weekend, they had a check that really wrote my brother's freedom out of jail. $250,000 to be exact, is what's the bail he was being held under. And one that highlighted a system of cash bail that we all know solely serves the rich and wealthy, solely serves white folks, and too often there's Black and brown young folks specifically arrested and don't even have access to bail. And if they do have access to bail, the bails are insurmountable charges and insurmountable amounts that no family can really obtain. I mean, we're talking about 16-year-old boy from the poorest congressional district in the country, Bronx, New York 15. Where is my family pulling $250,000 from? And so it's really a way in which New York and systems across the country put a ransom on the lives of so many people to make sure that they have no opportunity to get out, even though they're being held pre-trial, even though they're still considered innocent under the eyes of the law. And through that work, eventually my brother's case was dismissed and sealed with the pressure that Justice League and so many other organizations mounted on the DA's office. But it truly highlighted an injustice that happens way too often. We all know someone who's behind bars right now for something they didn't do. And even if they were involved in the crime, their charges are trumped up because that's what happens in the system. And it's oftentimes normalized.
Absolutely.
That's definitely why we have to end systematic racism. You know, the fight that you do is very important, you know, and I salute you for doing what you do. You know, it's not easy. And especially after you can see that what you're up against could be the same thing that happened, you know, to him. And you don't want to go through that, but it could happen to you. Even taking this fight on, they can make up charges against you and make you look like something that you're not and hold you on a ridiculous bail like that.
Yep.
Keep doing the work that keep doing what you're doing, man. Keep doing what you're doing.
At an early age.
Yeah. How old are you now?
I'm 18. I'll be 19 in a month.
Okay. Little Brandon, he's 19.
Yeah.
So it's great to see young people in the movement taking charge, seeing something that's wrong and standing up against it, because a lot of times a lot of young people feel like they don't have a voice because, you know, you're usually told what to do and what not to do. So it's like telling someone who's older than you or who even is in authority you already feel like I'm kind of out of place. And then you mentioned the young girl who got slammed. Okay, Jasmine, you're back. So you even mentioned a young girl who was slammed in school and she was knocked unconscious. It takes me back when that happened to me. And this is at school. You're supposed to be protected. I don't even understand why police are even there because that's pretty much where it starts. you're giving these kids a hard time in school. You know, they're already being approached by police in school, in the neighborhood, you know, on the streets. It's like, where is that safe place?
Absolutely. I mean, and that goes to show a lot because you're in Wisconsin, right? And
yep.
and this incident happened in Florida, and
right.
I've seen it happen in front of my eyes here in the Bronx, and so that goes to show that this is happening in every part of the country, in schools throughout the world, and no one's really doing anything about it because it's happening to Black girls like you, right? It's happening to Black and brown folks who don't have access or who don't have privilege, who can't or don't know how to sort of come up with a lawsuit, don't know how to hold police accountable. We can't really hold police accountable because there's no systems for it. There's nothing that allows us to have oversight over how policing happens in our communities, in our schools. And so at its core, like you said, schools are supposed to be safe havens. Schools are supposed to serve as educational resources, as places where folks are being groomed and prepared for intellectual and professional careers, not for prisons and not for the streets, right? We come to school from more than likely dangerous communities already, not to experience that danger even worse in our own educational institutions.
Absolutely. So Jasmine, how did you initially get involved?
Well, I got involved actually at 18 as well. I feel like I started late compared to Lewis, but really it was, you know, after graduating high school, had plans to go out, and I remember hating Stockton. I remember saying like I wanted to leave and never come back. It was really my goal to just like figure out how to get out of here. You know, both through just being impacted by the schools, juvenile hall in the schools, through, you know, just the system having, like, by the time I graduated, I had lost about 10 of my close friends actually who was killed by gun violence in Stockton. And for that very reason was the reason why I said I had to get out. After that, I actually started interning for the first, at the time, he was the youngest ever city council member by the name of Michael Tubbs, who was elected. Later became the youngest Black mayor, the first Black mayor in Stockton, and also the first youngest mayor to lead a city its size across this country. And it was through his internship, actually, I was invited to go to a trip in Tennessee with the Children's Defense Fund. And you know, I remember a week before, I was 6 months into an internship. To make this quick, I was 6 months into this internship and I quit. And I text Michael Tubbs and was like, thank you for this opportunity, but it's really not for me. And then about 2 days later, I got a text from him saying if I wanted to go on this trip, all expense paid, you know, they'll pay for us to go. And I said, of course, but did you get my text? Like, I just quit this internship. Like, you sure you want to send me? And I think really, like, he didn't tell me why, but he basically like believed in my leadership, believed in knowing that like we must invest in young people in the city. And the only way to make change is by continuing to invest in this generation. So anyways, I went to Tennessee. I met a bunch of civil rights leaders like Miriam Edelman, and Reverend Jim Lawson and Otis Moss Jr. and so many other leaders. And at the time, I was so angry because in school, I'm like, why didn't no one tell us? Like, the civil rights movement at the time, at that time, was less than 50 years ago. I was just hella mad. I'm just like, why didn't no one tell us this? Like, why didn't no one teach us this? And, you know, being able to sit at the feet of these elders and talk to them really changed my life. At one point in this trip, I was walking with Reverend Jim Lawson, who taught nonviolence, who taught a lot of the freedom, who trained a lot of the freedom riders, trained a lot of the leaders in the civil rights movement around nonviolence and the movement behind it. And there was a point where in this field, there was a field that was a part of the Underground Railroad where slaves were basically getting free. And there was a tunnel we went through. And when we went through this tunnel, I remember crawling through it. And for the first time, like, I really felt conditioned. Like, I never had feelings really, like, but it was at that moment where I realized that all the sacrifices of those from the civil rights movement to those who have paved the way for all of us, including all the trauma and the impact that was happening to my own family and around me, I finally felt for the first time. And he said, if I knew where my liberation and freedom was, what would I do? And I remember I went running. We were running towards the end of the field. I remember crying. And at that moment, I felt like I was running home to Stockton. Felt like I was running home to address all these like messed up situations that were happening, addressing systemic racism, like all the things that I felt like was the norm, I realized shouldn't be happening. So like being arrested in schools, I didn't realize that wasn't the norm. Like young people dying, like that's not normal. Like burying your friends, burying your relatives, burying your like family, like experiencing gun violence, like we think it's the norm. But like it wasn't until that day I realized that this actually shouldn't be happening. You know what I mean? And so for me, it started from there. The rest of the story was like really history. Like that moment I committed my life towards addressing, systemic racism, white supremacy, and really being able to say that I'm willing to put my body and life on the line, and really address, ending child poverty, like growing up poor, like understanding like that shit is not normal. Sorry, I shouldn't have said cuss. I don't know if I can do that.
That's how you feel. Real struggle. If that's how you feel, you can cuss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, but I'm gonna stop. But that's basically how I got involved. And through my work, I was a co-founder of one of the organizations here in Stockton, and then I recently joined the Gathering about 2 years ago, and have been on this fight with them. Really building out a campaign to close youth prisons in California. So that's something we've been able to do. We've been able to close youth prisons here effectively. July 1st of 2021, no more young people will be entered into a state facility. But we're still obviously figuring out the plans around alternatives to incarceration for young people, and, continuing to fight to, have police-free schools, to reimagine sort of safety, and changing the narrative around what safety means. Because we know too often law enforcement and systems have created safety to be against us. And one of the things we've been working with is really shifting the narrative as safety as a public health issue, and centering it on well-being. And oftentimes when we talk with young people, we ask them what safety means to them. They never say law enforcement. They never say police. They say family. They say safety to me feels like I could walk down the street without feeling harassed, or I could drive my car without the fear of getting pulled over by police. And when we think about safety in that framework, we're able to address that the systems and things that we have put in place for public safety actually isn't what we've been talking about, isn't what we've been investing our dollars in. And so having some of those reshifting of narratives when it comes to our law enforcement, moving away from, these traditional ways of systems speaking, their language. So anyways, I'm gonna stop. I know I've been ranting on a little bit, so.
No, we appreciate you. We appreciate you. Even going in depth about like exactly what you mean and how you feel. Because I remember being that numb person, who wasn't really feeling until it's like, dang, it's in your face. You get your reality check. Like, this is real. And like you said, it's not normal. Like, just because it's common, it doesn't mean it's normal. Just because you experience on a regular doesn't mean it is normal. And it's like when we grow up and become, start adulting, it's like when we are in other environments and we see and we actually get to feel like, no, that's not right, or that don't happen over there, that means that it's not normal. It's not okay. Something needs to change about it. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate you elaborating on that.
And speaking on that though, Destiny, didn't Joe Biden just say he was planning on like ending like a certain fraction of
a fraction of 8%
for prisons? And private prisons.
Yeah. Do you want to touch on exactly what that means? Because I know you have you're more educated on this topic than I am.
Okay, so like the private prisons, the way we looking at it is, it's like, okay, he's saying he's gonna end it by taking the money away from them, but it's just a fraction of 8%. You know, this is something that should have already been going to the community. It's peanuts. It's what they're used to giving us anyways.
Mm-hmm.
The way I see this is like he's basically saying it's not white only's bubbler, but just make sure you only let the white people in. You know what I mean?
That's a good illustration. That's a good illustration. Can you say that for me one more time?
So it's like he's saying, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a white only bubbler, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we're not gonna say that. We just gonna tell y'all as the servers and the people that operate the doors
Mm-hmm.
and the people that provided the water to not give it to black people. Make sure you only let the white people in. So it starts with our youth. It starts in the prisons. And, you know, it's something where we've been combating it for a long time. Yeah. So now we have our coming council here that's actually working in areas like the fight like you guys. And they're actually urging the president to put a ban on qualified immunity for police officers.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, 7 of the 15 common council members sent the letter Friday.
Yep.
To urge him not to ban qualified immunity, which were like Nikita Dodd and Nick Kovac and a couple other people.
So when you hear these issues, you can see that like it's a spread of systematic racism.
Mm-hmm.
You know, from the East Coast to the West Coast to the North Coast to the South Coast, it's everywhere.
Exactly.
There's nowhere in America we can get away from this. You know, and people need to understand that organizations such as you guys' organizations are the ones that are on the front line. You know, so we are very honored to have you guys on the show today.
Very impactful.
We're honored to be here. You know, this is amazing. So like, you know, this is a blessing for us too. And, you know, it's inspiring to see, you know, this podcast happen, you know, and to hear young people, you know, to lead a podcast. Because, you know, oftentimes we experience fake news. We experience so many blogs and folks who are telling these stories that do a lot of harm to our communities. And so it's important for us to reclaim the narrative, to take control of the narrative. So to shout out to y'all.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Shout out to Rebecca Burrell. She's who, you know, offer her platform, you know, for this to happen.
Shani B.
And Shani B as well.
Yes.
They helped us out a lot. They molded us to even feel even comfortable to even be on that platform to, you know, engage with people, and we sharing this. And then it's just like for the young people, we don't really, you know, we talk about it, but you know, when you go on social media, it's not really discussed. You know, it's other stuff that's happening that a lot of young people will, you know, focus on because they don't have this, you know, being offered off to them. So it's like we got to give people more options, and we have to at least share our narrative so they can know exactly what's going on. It's no, you know, the news can say whatever they want. And then when they have a video, they can, you know, the audio, they can make it to be whatever it is. But once we control the narrative, we can control our own story. And I also want to congratulate both of you on your victories. You know, with your brother, he winning his case. And then also with you just canceling out the youth prisons. That's big. That's incredible.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it makes me think about a training I just led on owning your narrative. So much of what sort of we weaved through in that training was really understanding what did some of our elders, specifically in the civil rights movement, do to get their message out in front, right? When we think about having our own media platforms, when we think about the privilege to have many of these social media platforms and the ways in which we're accessing them, sharing information, putting out content. Really, when I think about Twitter and the way in which it serves as like a microblog, and the way in which Twitter introduced tags that allowed us to see the movements like Black Lives Matter and Me Too galvanizing hundreds of thousands of people in unseen ways around the country. Just the power of that sort of media source, and the way in which we were able to elevate the voices of people who never got a chance to be on a CNN or MSNBC. But because they were on Twitter, because they sort of utilized what they had, I think it goes to show that our people always made everything out of rice and beans. Without having access to much of anything, we still made it work. When I think about the way in which young folks did it, like as young as 6 years old, as young as 4 and 5 years old during the Children's Crusade and the original Children's March in Alabama, the way in which these young children used radio at the time, exactly what y'all doing used radio at the time to send out key messages and organize one of the largest walkouts that the country had seen to that point. Mm-hmm. Young little black kids walking out, jumping out of windows, walking out to demand an end to the systemic racism, segregation, police brutality that was happening there. And still they were faced by it, right? They were still hosed down. They were still attacked by dogs. But it goes to show the way in which that we continue to be resilient and show up, the ways in which we continue to create platforms to be able to own our own narratives. It's important. And I'm grateful to be on here.
All right.
We are grateful to have you.
And, so our next topic is I'm feeling like what y'all saying actually relates. What they saying actually relates to the Joseph Mensah case.
Yes.
But right before we get to that, we're gonna take a quick commercial break and gather thoughts.
What up? My name is Brandon Jordan. I got a new semi-autobiographical self-help book entitled Courage Under Fire. The subtitle is Nothing Changes Unless You Change. Official release February 7th. It'll be everywhere. But right now you can get it on my website, IamBrandonJordan.com. Check it out.
Say something.
Looking to support Black-owned businesses in the Milwaukee area? Download the MKE Black mobile app, now available on Android and iPhone devices. Find your new favorite Black-owned restaurants, boutiques, and more in the Milwaukee, Waukesha, and Racine areas. MKE Black also supports local Black businesses with events, grants, and marketing. To learn more, visit us at mkeblack.org. Once again, that's mkeblack.org.
All the way through it.
Shout out MKE Black, man. Make sure y'all go on their site and support the Black businesses in the community.
And also, if you have a Black business, you also can register your Black business so then other people can reach you.
And back to the Joseph Mensah case, Brandon.
Speaking on that, Joseph Mensah, Monday he got sworn in as a Waukesha sheriff deputy in Waukesha County. When just last November 31st, he resigned from Tulsa PD after killing 3 people and them being justified. And released today, Wauwatosa actually recommended him to Waukesha. They had a letter of recommendation, and they spoke highly of him, which is just like makes no sense. Like, you killed 3 people, and you have people recommending you to another job after he got to sign off and resign for over $130,000 over the next year. Plus, he's still getting paid by Tulsa PD this whole year.
And that's just crazy, because after the former attorney, Stephen Biskupic, reviewed the Alvin Coles case, the U.S. attorney, he basically said that Joseph Mensah should be terminated from the Wauwatosa police force because of the risk of a 4th shooting, will be too great.
He's a liability.
Really. And it's quoted. Yep. That it says that, it would be too great of a chance that he could kill a 4th person.
Mm-hmm. And this letter of recommendation came straight from Barry Weber.
Chief Weber.
This is just, it makes me so mad. It's coming from the top of the chain of command, where they start to even establish policing. Mm-hmm. The head of the command is very racist and just treating us some type of way to where, the officers that know they do wrong, when the case is brought up, they do nothing about it. So let's bring Jasmine back in and see what our guests have to say about, the re-signing of Joseph Mensah to now be a sheriff deputy
in Waukesha, just one county over.
Yeah, no, this is it makes me angry to know that this is happening, and when we were in Wisconsin, the fact that Officer Mensah has killed Alvin Cole, Antonio Gonzalez, Jay Anderson, and who else knows what's been reported by him around, whether it be use of force, excessive use of force. Mm-hmm. It's just it's unfortunate that this continues to happen. I think that ultimately, he needs to have his badge completely taken, and he needs to be convicted for what he did ultimately. And in California, we continue to see this happen. I know that you all have decertification, but it just looks like things that it's not being taken seriously. Like in one of our cases, we continue to see officers just move county to county with no consequences. And then we just saw that here he was given basically a free pass and was like, and here's a recommendation, I think full pressure needs to be pulled on, and he needs to be terminated completely. It's just unacceptable.
And convicted, like you said. Luis, did you want to touch on this at all?
I think Jasmine sort of hit the nail on the head with the decertification piece. When we think about like policing in America, I mean, it's this, right? Because even if we get to fire these police officers, if we don't charge them, where are we going, right? And we can talk about, and I think through an abolitionist lens, we talk about how do we make prisons obsolete? How do we make it so that no one's actually ending up in jails? But I think operating within the boundaries and the confines of our current system, these police officers need to be getting charged. Absolutely. As any other person would for killing someone. It's murder. Not murder one time, but Joseph Mensah has 3 bodies on his hands. Literally, he has bloody hands walking around as a police officer. And when I first heard of the resignation after we came back from having the action out there in Wauwatosa, I had a really bad gut feeling. And it was because I knew very much that they strategically let him resign so that he could be hired from in another department. And yeah, look, someone just dropped it in the comments. I think at its core, it's repulsive. The fact that he literally just got a promotion. He went from being a officer, a detective, to now deputy sheriff at another police department. That goes to show that he's being literally rewarded by white supremacy. He's coming into the, and I think a lot of people struggle with separating the fact that he's a black man with the blue uniform that he wears, and the fact that he rather abide by his badge than his black skin color, right? When I think about police officers across the country, the police officer that harassed and terrorized people like my brother in my community, he was a black police officer. Mm-hmm. But he thought with his job first. They think with their badge first. When they say it themselves, we don't cross the blue line. And the blue line is imaginary, first of all. There's no real blue line. But the blue line that they abide by is a line that was drawn by the initial KKK, by the initial slave patrols, which is what policing was founded on. And I think it goes to show when Tamika's out talking about the sellout Negroes, these are the type of people that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the Joseph Mensahs of the world who get to kill 3 people, resign, get paid for the rest of the year, get a recommendation from that same exact chief that asked him to resign, and now he's going to be deputy sheriff in another police department. I mean, it's disgusting, and in some ways is news to me, but it goes to show why we need to decertify, why we need to have a national standard on decertification, why Biden needs to get stronger on policing. It's no secret to anyone that he's the reason why policing was ramped up while he was leading in Congress. It's no secret to anyone that the reason why mass incarceration is the way it is because of Biden and his crime bill that he chanted around. And so now as president, he has that urgency, and we need to place it on him to act, to set a national standard for decertification, to set a national standard for defunding, to enact things like the Breathe Act. I mean, it's real policy that we want to see. He can keep coming out with executive orders, but if we're not seeing that drafted into policy, if he's not operating with the Senate and with Congress that Democrats now control, we're not going to see this legislation withstand past his administration. And there's so much work that we need to do, and that work needs to withstand past 4 years.
Right.
Speaking of police, it's in Kenosha today. 2 of the officers who were involved in the Jacob Blake shooting were taken off administrative leave and went back to school duty. And the officer who shot Jacob Blake is still on administrative paid leave since August. So he's basically getting paid to just sit at home while Jacob Blake
it vacation.
While Jacob Blake is in a wheelchair.
I call it paralyzed. Paralyzed down. It's like it's always happening, but it's almost like the police are invincible. They are the law as they feel, and that's not okay. It's not okay because and then you're getting transferred somewhere else to where you can do it again. And I'm trying to figure out, like, why did Waukesha even hire him to begin with? Like, how did he even deserve a letter of recommendation?
And you know you're a liability.
Like, how was that even able to happen?
When the curfew happened, Waukesha actually assisted Tulsa with arresting people and taking them to Waukesha County and holding people in cells for over 5 and 6 hours. So they do know who Joseph Mensah is. They and it's very sad that Chief Weber even wrote a letter of recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we know that, like, the thing about it too is, like, the sheriffs are oftentimes one of the worst departments in across this damn state. So across the country, like, we're seeing, they have less oversight. They police themselves, literally. Mm-hmm. Not often, when it comes to who governs, most times people who govern city police, they have oversight from either a council, a city manager, or the mayor, right? And when you look at the sheriffs, they have oversight over the sheriff. Like, the sheriff oversees everything. Yeah. So everything doesn't become as unveiled as it becomes when you have multiple agencies involved. Yeah. And so I think that we know that oftentimes the sheriffs we see across this country are one of the most corrupt departments of law enforcement. Mm-hmm. And so I think that it's not surprising that the county, decided to pick up, Officer Mensah, because that's just what they do. Right. And that's why it's important for us to understand that, like, when we talk about, defund the police, or when we talk about the system, I think about sort of the principles of King and nonviolence that we oftentimes talk about and try to embody. Is one of the 3 principles is that we attack the forces of evil and not persons doing evil. So although we keep attacking, we know that Officer Mensah has done evil, but we got to address the entire damn system. We have to dismantle and remove the entire system, because we're not attacking really the force of evil. Is that we have a system in place that has been built and established to catch slaves, to lynch Black bodies, to lynch, you know what I mean? So it's like, if we want to address what, policing at its core, I think we also have to think about liberation in the sense of, what does it look like without law enforcement and policing in this country? And fundamentally, at the end of that, is that we know we have to uproot evil, which is that, and continue to move towards a more just system that doesn't include, policing that continues to harm and kill, our people. And so when I heard he moved to the sheriff's, it's just like, another worse department to just be a part of.
Right. It's like they see he is perfect for the job. And it's like, when you think about it, it's like he is. And that's what scares us. Like, it's going to happen again. And it's like, it may even be justified again. It's like with these situations, with every scenario, they were so different. But in every scenario, I just felt like at not one point was your life really in danger. Not even like, even if you don't even say life, I don't feel like he was in danger of harm, period. So it's like, how are all of these justified? Because I feel like as me being a law-abiding citizen, if I found myself in these situations, not even just 3 times, just 1 time, I'll be convicted. I'd be in jail. Depending on what state I'm in, I'll be, death penalty. So it's like, it's almost like, to be a cop is probably like the best job you can get at this point. If you want to be an evil person, if that's what you're seeking, that's probably the way you should go, because it's too corrupt. And then they're making it okay. They're excusing it, and then they're rewarding it on top of it. Like the financial blessings that he's even gotten from the police. Mm-hmm. You're paid for the remainder of the year, and it's a pandemic. And a lot of us who, these is coming out of our, but you're making sure that he got it for the remainder of the year, and people don't even know where their next meal is going to come from the next day.
It's scary. It is so scary.
It's very scary.
The way I see it, it's like, okay, y'all say Joseph Mensah is not a killer, and we known him to kill 3 people. Now he's put on a force where he has lesser surveillance on himself.
Yes.
You know, he has lesser supervision that he has to, you know, respond back to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sheriffs can't just meet up anywhere on the highway with just more than 2 units without, you know, it being something where, you know, shift changeover, or maybe, you know, they're planning speed traps together.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like you never see more than that unless they pull somebody over.
Mm-hmm.
So now he's given that chance to where if he wants to, nobody's going to know. You know, and on the highway, you know, like we have to find out a way to combat this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's sad that we have to start at the bottom where we have to ask for bans on chokeholds, and we have to ask for bans on the police drawing guns, you know, and we have to ask for, you know, just to be treated equal.
Be treated as humans. Be treated as humans first, and then be treated equally. Because even with him having this sheriff position, that's less accountability than what he started with. And starting with the accountability as a regular police officer, there was no accountability there, period. So it's like, damn if we do, damn if we don't. Like, what to do now? It's all...
Man, let's jump.
What up?
I think it makes me think about the news that broke today. The Philly DA, he went out and fired 31 district attorneys out of his office after being reelected this year. 4 days ago, actually, he was sworn in. And today, 31 DAs walked into their office with letters of asking them to immediately resign from all of the positions. Wow. And it's the largest clean out that a district attorney has ever done. But that's what happens when we elect district attorneys that actually commit to the work that they say they're going to do during the campaigns. He ran on a campaign saying that he was one of the sort of most prominent civil rights attorneys in Philly, led some of the most prominent cases against the police department. And in his role, in his job in the district attorney's office, he was going to make sure to root out all forms of evil, right? And so it talks about the DAs that refuse to prosecute cops, the ones who purposely select juries that they know are going to acquit cops, the ones who operate and present shitty cases to make sure grand juries don't hold cops accountable. Mm-hmm. And every place from Louisville, Kentucky, with what we saw Daniel Cameron do, to what we just saw happen with Jacob Blake, with the district attorney announcing he didn't find any reason for that cop to be charged when the whole entire world saw the video, Jacob Blake being shot several times in the back, 7 at close range. And I mean, when we think about the tragedies, when we think about the crazy nature of it, that looped in with the fact that this is being televised. Like, you can't say you don't know what happened. You can't say you need the fact. You can't say you need more evidence. It's in front of you. Millions of people have seen it all across social media, right? And so when we have a store worker and a clerk being able to make common sense and say this person needs to be charged, this is criminal behavior, and a district attorney who studied law and knows this is criminal behavior and refuses to charge a cop, we have a serious issue. And that's why I think civic engagement is important. When we talk about elections, DA elections is one of the ones that we oftentimes leave out. Mm-hmm. They make a lot of decisions. They hold a lot of power and weight in our communities. The way in which Philly is probably going to drastically change over the next couple of years is going to set a standard for the entire country, because they've rooted out the people who actually hold the entire court systems in Philadelphia, because these DAs are sitting and are at lunch and are at parties with the judges. Yeah. These are the friends of the cops. And when they work together, there's no way in which one body can hold the other accountable, unless it's someone like a Larry Krasner, who's coming in there and willing to be independent, who's coming in there and willing to hold police officers accountable, who's coming in there to seek true justice and not be corrupt. And so that, I mean, that's what needs to happen out in Wisconsin. First and foremost, we need DAs who are going to be willing to charge the cops. We need an attorney general who's going to be willing to charge the cops. We need a mayor who's going to be willing to stand up against the police departments. We need a mayor who's going to be willing to defund the police departments to reallocate those funds towards systems that do work and keep us safe. And Wisconsin ain't the only place. I mean, like Jasmine said, we could root out Joseph Mensah. We could get him fired tomorrow, but that's not going to solve the problem. because 10 more officers are going to go and kill more unarmed citizens the next day. And
Exactly.
until we address the system as a whole, we're not going to see accountability. We're not going to see transparency. And that's at the core of a system that was grounded and institutionalized on lynching and slave patrolling Black folks.
Okay. Let's see what our viewers have to say about Joseph Mensah. You know, what type of advice can you give to where people can make sure that Mensah gets fired, where Mensah gets terminated, you know, where he gets convicted. He needs to be in jail. You know what I mean? We don't need a fourth shooting.
Right. From the same person. And then it's like, even with the DA, it's like every time you go to the voting polls, no one is running up against him. So it's like, dang, like, what now? So what to do? So do you guys have any advice for us?
I'll make this brief because I want Jasmine to chime in on this. But what we just saw happen this year, what we saw in 2018 after the Women's March, and the work that Carmen, Linda, Bob, Tamika, and the entire team that led that effort, the ways in which hundreds of women were empowered and ran for office, and majority of them won, is what we need to see happen again. We need to see our communities stand up. We need to see our communities run for office. Oftentimes, we disenfranchise ourselves when we're not running for these offices.
Big that.
We can win these offices. We can control and be the ones who are making these decisions for ourselves if we actually decide to go up against the system. I mean, I think it's cliche to say go up against the system. I think it's cliche to say keep your eyes on the prize, but that's actually what we need to do. When we see folks like AOC start with under $20 and is able to build a grassroots army that put her into Congress, and she's now one of the most powerful congressional leaders in the country, that could happen in every city council across the country. That could happen in every DA office across the country. Absolutely. We just need to be willing to do it, right? We need to be willing to organize our people. We need to be willing to knock on them doors. We need to be willing to make those phone calls, make sure our people are showing up to vote when we need to. And not just in general elections, right? Because the president is not going to affect what happens in your local block. And a larger, broader scale, the president has a lot of impact. But when we talk about what's happening in your very, very local town, what's happening specifically in Wauwatosa, what's happening specifically in Milwaukee, what's happening specifically in Kenosha, right? These are the things that we could change if we're running for office. And so what are we doing to support you all, right? And y'all campaigns to go into office? What are we doing to support and fund y'all work? Because that's what we need to start with talking about, right? Y'all the leaders, right? Y'all the ones doing the work in the community. Identify who those people are, right? And a lot of people say, like, I mean, I grew up and still I think this way, saying politics ain't for me. But I think if I'm positioned in a place where my community needs me to run for office, I'm willing to do that. Because I know that powerful leaders, people who are able to get a message across, people who have been trained and organizing and effective strategy building and base building, have the capacity to build up teams from nothing, from scratch, to win offices, to win elections across the country. And we need to see a wave like that again, right? We've seen it after the Women's March again, a wave of women. We have a Black VP right now. A Black woman is our vice president for the first time ever.
Right.
Not just the first Black person, but the first woman, the first Black woman, the first South Asian woman, right? And so when we set a standard of this is what we're going to do in every locality across the country, this is what we're going to do in Congress, because in 2018, we can't forget the numbers. The first time that there was over 100 women elected to Congress. The very first time, and that was immediately after the Women's March. That was the way in which a slate of empowerment happened. And we need to see that happen in the DA office. We need to see that happen in local mayoral races. And New York City has elections coming up soon. And I'm pretty sure Wauwatosa and Milwaukee has an election coming soon. And so which one of y'all friends y'all talking to and pushing them to run to office? Set up them GoFundMe, set up them Action Blue accounts, because I'm willing to donate. Like, what do we need to do to get them into there?
And this is why local elections matter, because we need to get people in these seats that are really for the community and not just here for another dollar.
Exactly. And it's like to have the heart for it, because it's like to learn it. You know, you can learn anything, but I'd rather your heart be there and you not be as educated, because, you know, you can get trained. You can pretty much get trained to do anything. But if your heart is in the right place, you can definitely get that seat.
and let's not be dismayed, right? Because these people don't know anything more than we do. They go up in there and follow the same exact same exact systems. We don't need them to learn anything. If anything, we need them to tear that whole shit down and start from scratch with what they know, with what the community wants. We don't want to learn into their old traditional ways of politicking.
Right.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and give an announcement. So I am going back to school, and I'm going to study political science. And I'm thinking in the next 2 years, I'm going to be an auditor.
That's right.
We got to speak these type of things into existence.
That's right.
Just like our Black powerful sisters, our brothers, they got to be a lot more of us stepping up.
Mm-hmm.
As much as you feel like you don't matter or you can't fix the situation, it's our duty to protect our women.
That's right.
You can't be out here being a thug and you can't even protect our women.
Right. Protecting the corner, but you ain't protecting the ladies. Like how? So Jasmine, did you? Oh, I'm sorry, you have to ask something.
No, go ahead.
Okay, Jasmine, what was your advice for us with the whole Joseph Mensah thing?
I mean, Lewis done shut it down, but I think I just echo like the importance of we saw it this election, we saw it in Georgia, the power of the people, right? We didn't vote for Biden and Kamala because we thought they were going to save the day, but the people knew what we had to do. And I think that our people have all the resources, all the knowledge, all the power to do something. It's going to require us to show up. So I feel like voting is necessary, but it's not sufficient, right? Showing up in the streets is necessary, but it's not sufficient. And our mentor, Carmen, oftentimes talks about there's a lane for everybody, right? I think that we all understand that it's not a one size all fits kind of solution of addressing this particular issue, right? We know that every community needs are different. So for Wauwatosa is like, what is missing, right? For Wisconsin, Milwaukee or whatever town, Kenosha is like, what is the needs of our city, addressing what roles and resources are needed to either infiltrate these positions, it just really depends. I think that sometimes we got to have this inside out strategy, right? Who are people on the inside who are really there for the people who are working? How do we move them to champion our issues, right? How do we move them to put our stuff on the agenda? And that goes with voting. That goes with showing up at the polls. That goes with being these elected officials. I think with Mensah, one of the things that I'm thinking about is just like, how do we bring in the people bring an indictment on him, right? Like, I know we've been saying fire Officer Mensah, but I think if we can figure out a true indictment on him, right? Mm-hmm. And figure out like, I don't know. It's just like, who else could step up at this point? If the state is refusing, it's just, I think continuing to put pressure on him, finding places where we can bird dog him. Where is he showing up? What time does he get to the job? Are we meeting him there? Are we greeting him there with the faces of, of Jay Anderson and Alvin Cole and Antonio Gonzalez? Right. Is he reaping it's just hard to, I don't know. I just think that's something we can continue to do. Mm-hmm. The public pressure cannot stop. It cannot rest. We cannot rest until we see him, charged and convicted. We know obviously in this country that historically, the conviction rates of law enforcement officers are really, really small, but that doesn't mean it can't happen.
Absolutely.
And I think that we must continue to just strive for justice and not lose sight of that. But to Lewis's point is like, when you running, Sedan, we ready to, donate, share it around. I think it's important that one of the things we say is like the greatest investment we can do is invest in our people. And I think that when we continue to invest in our people, we will see the fruit of our labor. And, I'm reminded of this Mexican proverb that says they try to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds. And so when we understand that, what is happening in our communities, they try to kill us. They try to get rid of us, but we are birthing and uprooting this broken system that has for decades and centuries and years historically try to kill our people. But what I imagine and hope to see, and one of the things that we talk about also in one of our principles of Kingian nonviolence, is really that the universe is on the side of justice. And we hear Dr. King and folks say that the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And I think that, we just got to continue to keep our eyes on the prize and know that if we stay diligent with the small stuff that we're doing, like our work is not in vain. It's tiring, it's hard, it's painful. There's a lot of stuff happening. And I just hope that you all don't get discouraged, because it's so easy to get caught up in not seeing things happen overnight. Unfortunately, we see mothers who we saw in Wisconsin, who's like, we've been at this for 10 years. We've been at this for 15 years, and it's like, there's still no justice. And I think that, if we remain patient and diligent and committed, I believe that one day we will see the promised land if we continue to just stay committed to building up a better community, the beloved community, the framework of what we continue to ground ourselves in. But I don't know, just continue to show up and, figure out how our attorneys are actually putting public pressures. Like, we need more attorneys who can help stand by organizations and help us, who are the writers in our communities who can write up the indictment, who's telling our stories, our news reporters telling them the right, or you all continue to tell us the right. I think that's how we continue to do it. So people hear Officer Mensa's name and other people and know that it's important for us to dismantle these systems.
Mm-hmm. That's right. It's just now since we going through this, you got to think about it. Okay, we've come from deaths where there have been shootings of black men, unarmed black men, dying, being killed by the hands of the police. We have now George Floyd being aired out for the world to see, a knee on his neck, suffocated. Mm-hmm. Dating back to the Ernest Lacy, when he was killed by the police.
He actually got a law made.
And these things continue to happen, and it's now time to put an end to it. So one way we feel we can put an end to it is the ban on the qualified immunity is really huge, and now we have to understand, people out there, you have to understand that we have power in the Senate, so we can enforce, the law change, and we can actually call America on this bullshit constitution that is written out for us, that we were created equal, and in this bullshit, protocol of the way we look at justice, and we have to fight for it, and we're protesting. No, now we have people in office, so we can start lobbying, and we can start getting things done in a way where it's most effective, and that it's in writing, and it's the way that I guess the written out America wants to view it.
So we thank y'all for we thank y'all for coming on the show and bringing awareness to what's going on, where you guys are at, and speaking on Joseph Mensa. As you guys were out here in October, I believe, when you guys did the march. We just appreciate you guys for standing in solidarity with us.
Mm-hmm. And also for, just dropping some gems on us, as well as all of the viewers watching. We appreciate you, and then to hear this coming from someone all the way over there, you know what I'm saying? And then to be like, oh, okay. We got people standing with us. This not just our fight. We have people fighting with us, because I think a lot of people, they get discouraged when they don't see their neighbor. When you be like, oh yeah, Joseph Mensa, and they like, who was that? And then this be able to hear that it's people on the East Coast, West Coast who know who this is. They're actually helping with making us change, whether it's just giving us advice, whether it's talking about it with us, talking about it with a friend. So we definitely appreciate you guys.
Thank you. We appreciate you all for having us on. I think I'm reminded by MLK's quote when he talks about being cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. When he talks about not being able to sit idly by in Atlanta because he had to be concerned with what was happening in Birmingham. When he said the quote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice anywhere," I think that's really what, as followers of Dr. King, as folks who follow the principles of nonviolence that Dr. King created for us, we're really empowered and want to show up for communities in Wisconsin. We want to show up for other communities because we know that when there's an injustice in California, when there's an injustice in New York City, when there's an injustice in any piece of the country, you are going to show up for us, right? And so what are we doing to show up for each other? We saw some of you all, I saw Becca and others out in DC when our elders in the movement called for a march on Washington just this past summer. And that's the ways in which we can show up for one another. When you all called on us, we were down there in Wisconsin because that's what it means to show up. That's what it means to cultivate and create the beloved community. And so it's our honor and privilege to be on and share space with you all. And I see a comment coming in. How can you all follow us? You can follow The Gathering's work on Instagram and Twitter at gather4justice. And our website is gathering4justice.org. And you can also follow us at our task force social media, which is all at NY Justice League. But thank you all for having us on, and I'll let Jasmine give her closing words.
It was an honor to have you guys on the show. We thank you all, and shout out to our viewers too for chiming in, and giving good insight to the things that are going on and listening to their story, and understanding what it's like to go through different struggles from the East Coast to the West Coast.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and our viewers are really, they are really consistent too. We usually have the same people. We have a lot of newcomers too, but we definitely appreciate those who definitely look forward to Wednesdays and checking us out. We appreciate you guys, and we love you all.
So make sure you keep sharing the flyer. Tag your friends, your neighbor, somebody in Kenosha, just tag anybody and make sure they tune in because we out here spitting real knowledge about the community, about Black Lives Matter, about police brutality, about a lot of topics that are important in the Black and brown community.
The justice reform, for the ghetto. That's what's going on right now. We starting a new wave of how you keep us, at bay. And we not going for it. So we here to make sure y'all get the facts and make sure y'all share it.
Share with your mama, your granny, your sister, your cousin, your brother, the next door neighbor, the dude upstairs, the lady who be talking crazy. Share it.
The old lady down the street. Make sure you share it.
Tag a friend. Get some merch. Revolution Ready.
We got the merch. Make sure you
every Wednesday tune in. We be back at y'all 5:00 next Wednesday.
Make sure you follow us at Revolution Ready on every social media. The Gmail is up top if you want to email us about anything coming up. And if you want to come on the show, make sure you email us. And make sure you purchase some of the merch.
I'm Destiny Monet.
I'm Sedan Smith. And that's Brandon Wilborn.
Make sure y'all tune in next week. Thank y'all.
See y'all next week.